You're really going to be the master this time because you know what to expect, right? Yeah, the same thing. Yeah. Sorry, you both get the repeat, right? But then very different after. That's right. Different selections. All right. Oops. All right, good morning. How's everybody? Anyone exhausted? Yeah. It's a hard week coming back from vacation. My kids went back to school this morning, so they were very cranky, and that made this morning interesting. And the roads were so busy today because I think everyone went back to school. But I'm glad that you're here. It's our second class. We get to start our content today, which I think is kind of fun. And then we get Monday off, right? I probably don't have to remind you of that, but we have a holiday on Monday, which is kind of nice. You get a little bit of a break as we ease back into it. So I wrote that up here just to remind you in case you didn't know. Somebody last class was so excited. They're like, I didn't know. So if you didn't know, we have Monday off. But what I want to do, I have a couple of things that I like to do on the second day in all of my classes. And I know some of you have done this before in a class just a moment ago or in previous semesters. But I want to see, are there any questions at all about anything from last class? Anybody have any lingering questions about the syllabus or anything we talked about last time? Just to double check. Yeah. For our no, so Canvas, but that's it. Yeah, just as long as you have access to Canvas, then you're Anybody else? Any other questions? Otherwise, I like to do a little review via Kahoot on the second day. Chance to compete for candy again, right? So what I have here is I think it's 10 or 11 questions, kind of just a few things to review from last time. So if you downloaded the app, fantastic. If you have a phone or a computer or a tablet, if you want to go to the website, you can join. There's the pin. So how do you create a little character in your name? If you don't have a piece of technology, you could jump in with a neighbor and play together. But I'll give you a few minutes if you can join. Oh, perfect. You're already on it. Thank you. We'll put the music on because that's the best part about Kahoot. And I'm sorry, it does cut it off over here on the left, which I know makes it a little tricky. Sorry about that. There's nothing I can do about it, but we'll do our best. I love all the little characters. They're so cute. I'm going to put the code over here. If you get booted out for some reason, it will be here. All right, so in a minute, as soon as we're all ready, I think it's 11 questions for you related to things we talked about last night. Most of them are related to the syllabus. A few of them are from the slides that I shared with you, and maybe less relevant, but still. You are awarded points for speed and accuracy with your response. So what'll happen is after I give you the question, there'll be 4 options and you'll pick the right one, hopefully. And if you get it right and you're fast, we'll end up with a leaderboard. If you're the leader for any question or at the end, I have candy for you. And then you have one more opportunity for candy later today. So lots of candy opportunities. So we'll go through these. And again, some are more important than others, but just an opportunity to quickly review. And if you get booted out at any point, here's the code. Are we ready? It looks like we've kind of, okay, give you another second. Depending on the strength of the Wi-Fi, it's kind of all over the place. And then just sometime before you leave today, you can turn those in, or you can bring them up now while we're waiting. That's fine. No, not at all. It's just for fun.
Because I didn't put my real name.
Oh, no, it's just
yeah, I put it under Charmander.
I love that. All right. Everybody good? Are we ready? All right. So again, 11 questions, some more important than others. But here we go. And I'll read the ones that are over here that are a little bit cut off just to try and help you out. Okay. Starting super simple, but important. Question 1. What is the name of this class? Human Sexuality, Intro to Sociology. You can read the other. Very nicely done, right? All of you knew which class you were in. I love that. Always know what class you're in. I was an academic counselor for years, and people would come to me and they'd be like, I'm upset with this class and this teacher, and then they wouldn't know what class or what teacher. Just always know what class you're in, right? Human Sexuality, very nice. Let's see who, right? Annika, and I expected it, right? Because you were leading in the last class. Yeah. So you knew what to expect, right? Okay, next question. Getting a little harder, I suppose. And those of you just coming in, if you want to join the Kahoot, you can jump in at any time. Number 2, what is the best way to contact your instructor? Best way to get a hold of you? Phone, email. And again, I'm so sorry that it cuts it off. Drives me nuts, but I can't fix it. Okay. All right, most of you got it. Perfect. Email. You can always call me. You can come to my office hours, but email is always going to be the fastest way. I'll get back to you the quickest. So email, fantastic. All right. Katie, where's Katie? Excellent, right? Okay. Next question. Number 3. I have how many kids in total? 4, 7, 6, 8. I didn't give you the tricky answer, tricky option. Totally not important, but I'm asking you anyway. And that's okay, right? Most of you got an 8, right? No, but I didn't give you the 3. If I gave you the 3, that'd be tricky, right? I know, I'm so sorry. I can't tell you how many times I've asked for them to fix that, and they can't. So, 8, including my pets, right? Not important. Well, I mean, relative. It's important to me, I suppose, right? Let's see. Katie's still in the lead. Nice job. Take her down. I'm just kidding. Okay. Number 4. What is the name of our required textbook? On this side, Exploring Sexuality in Modules, Guide to Sexuality. Awesome. Sexuality Now. I think it's a really great textbook. I reviewed a lot of them. I like this one a lot. I'm actually doing like a big review project with the publisher, which is kind of fun. Yeah.
I found the book really cheap on Chegg, $56, and it retails for $166.
Amazing.
So you save like over $100.
Perfect. I love it. Right. How many of you have either ordered or have your book? Like it's either on the way or you have it. That's a lot of you. That's fantastic. If you haven't done it yet, I won't see you again until Wednesday. Try and order it between now and then. Rent it. Loose leaf ebook, the older version, this version, the free version, whatever you're comfortable with, right? Find whatever is going to work for you and whatever you're okay with. But try and get that before Wednesday if you don't have it already. Okay, so where are we at? Cheetah. Right, I love the names. So I should have told you you could do any name you want, but that sometimes gets a little interesting. So, but I like it anyway. All right, who's Cheetah? Oh, nice. All right. Okay, true or false? You should come to class even if you aren't feeling well. That's fast, right? I'm such a like smart ass at times. Like part of me wanted to say true just because I don't know, right? But obviously, if you're not feeling well, don't come. The lectures are recorded. I don't know if you saw the one from last class was up there. So if you ever aren't feeling well, it's okay, right? Stay home, take care of yourself. You can watch the lecture online. Excellent. Still in the lead, right? Okay. Number 6, our exams will be taken in person, on Canvas. Most of you got it great on Canvas. So remember that on exam days, you won't come here. We won't have a class. You'll take them online. You should do really well on them because you can use your notes in your book. And there are study guides online. If you want to join us on Kahoot, the code's right here. So yes, on Canvas, with 3 pieces of candy for you. I'm getting excited for you, right? I'm like picking your candy. I'm like, oh. Okay, next question, number 7. If you miss an exam, which of the following is true about making it up? You can make it up anytime. You can make it up before the tests are graded. All right. Okay. So correct with the blue. So, the exam days you have now, you know when they are. If for some reason something comes up and you know you're not going to be able to take it, you got to reach out to me ahead of time. Okay. If you contact me after a deadline, just in general, I'm going to feel I'm going to be very hesitant to work with you. If you reach out to me before, I will do anything to work with you. Okay. So just make sure if you're ever going to miss something, you contact me ahead of time and we can work on it together. Okay. 4 pieces of candy. You really got to take them down. Just push a button. I'm actually not competitive. Number 8, attendance and participation are graded by responding to questions in class and activities. Turn it in. All right, ooh, a little more split, right? So 10 random 10-point activities is the right answer. The index card is the first one. We'll do several of these throughout the semester. Ideally, we'll do 11 and I'll drop the lowest one. But please try and be here. I will never give you a pop quiz, ever. Like, that's just so mean. I will never do that to you. And please do be here and respond to questions. But this is how you get those points, okay? Still in the lead. What are we up to, 5? I like it. Okay. Number 9. If you miss a participation homework assignment, it can be submitted whenever for full points by email before the end of the class session it was due. It's tricky because it doesn't give you the text on yours, right? It's just the color that always throws me off. Okay, so if I give you a homework assignment and it's due on Wednesday and you're missing Wednesday's class, you can still email it to me on Wednesday. Okay, so if you're ever going to miss, reaching out to me, contacting me is going to be important. Still in the lead. I'm so not competitive, but for some reason in here, I'm like, take them. I just want someone to know, right? And yet I'm rooting for you at the same time. How many homework assignments will you complete in this class? How many homework assignments? 1, 3, 2, there's no. All right, 2. Oh, that was close, right? Just 2. So these are the field trip and the paper. Did anyone look over the options on Canvas? A couple of you. And as a side note, and I'll talk about this more later, if you ever have an idea for an assignment, you can always run it by me as well. So last semester, somebody went to a strip club and wrote about their stereotypes and assumptions of strip clubs before and after. Loved it. Great, right? So yes, if you want to go to a strip club, let's talk so that you can get credit for it too, right? If you have other ideas, is my point. You can always run them by me. We'll talk about this in a little bit. But two assignments. All right, last chance to take into. All right, number 11, super not important, but who is my favorite football player?
I have this.
Peyton Manning, Cooper Cup. Correct and fast. I know. I don't think I talked about it too much in here. Right? Brady.
I got it.
Poor shame. Selection, we'll just say, right? Brady doesn't matter, but I really thought he'd unretire one more time, right? I'm still holding out hope. He'll be like 80 and be like, I can go season. Right? All right, so let's see where we are at the end here. Third place overall, Drew. Where's Drew? Nice job. Second place, Katie. I wonder if it's not you, that's wrong, right? All right, if it's somebody else, that'd be odd. All right, so if you're one of these three little happy characters, come get candy from me at the end. You can just take the bag, and yeah.
Just to let everyone know, this is the second class I have with her. That's why I'm a cheetah.
Yeah.
I'm a cheater.
Ah.
I already know all the answers. So
Yeah, we did just do
sorry,
this in
guys,
the other one.
didn't really have a chance.
I thought Annika was going to get you. The two of them followed me. All right. It's all right. So again, those are just a couple of things to review. Hold on to the syllabus. Are there any other questions? Anything else about the syllabus at all that you have questions about or that I can answer before we move on from it? Just to double check. All right. So I'm going to close this and you can close it as well. Or I'll just close this one here. Yes. Okay. So two more things really quickly, or they're kind of related, and then we'll get into the chapter here. I always like to take a few minutes. I just want to talk about note taking for a moment. So the slides are on Canvas, right? So you don't need to write down what's in the slides. You have access to them, right? So give yourself a break on trying to write down what's in the slides. They're on Canvas. Remember that I'm also recording this. And if it ever feels fast or you feel like you missed something, you can go back and listen to it again or even watch it again. If you missed the sound of my voice over the long weekend, you watch our recording again. But what a lot of people will do is take notes. And I would definitely encourage you to do so. The more ways that you write down and process information, the more likely you are to remember. So if you are looking at it, listening to it, and writing it down, that's 3 different methods of encoding. It's going to make you more likely to hold on to it a little bit longer. Now, whatever works for you is fine. If you don't take notes and that works for you, totally fine. But I would recommend it, especially if you're like on the fence. Yeah.
Isn't it much easier to encode information when you can find a way to make it relevant to yourself?
Yeah, for sure, right? If you can do what's called elaborative rehearsal, right? Like making connections between things, you are much more likely to hold on to. And if you're interested in it, that helps too, right? Yeah. We have a very interesting topic, so I think that helps us in here. But I would recommend that you take notes. If I write something on the board, or if I give you an example, or if there's stuff beyond the slide, that's the stuff you're going to want to write down. Again, you don't need to write down what's here because you have access to it. And a lot of people, I've seen a lot of people do this. It's completely up to you. You don't have to print stuff, especially if you have a piece of technology you're using. But sometimes people will print them in like a 3-slide format, and then they'll write their notes on the side over here, or they can like write on here as well. Again, totally up to you, but I would recommend that you are either like digitally or by hand, taking notes in some way. I would also like to help you with that just a little bit. A lot of people will share notes, right? And so maybe if you're absent or you want to compare notes with somebody else, and we're such creatures of habit, like I'm kind of remembering a lot of you are in the exact same spots as you were last time, at least as much as I can remember. You moved back and Sammy's not here, right? Oh, poor Sammy, right? I remembered your dog's name, right? But I went home. Just find a couple of people around you, whatever is convenient, like 2, 3, 4 people, and maybe some of you even know each other, which makes it way easier. But exchange an email, or phone number, or like social media, whatever it is that you're comfortable sharing. If you miss a class, your classmates are your best resource. You can always reach out to me. Of course, I'm here, but you could get notes from a classmate. You could find out what you missed. You obviously have the recording, but it's good to have a few people to connect with. So I'll give you a few minutes, find a few people around you, exchange information, and then we'll go from there. No.
Oh, okay. I was just gonna like do that in the text, but I could also. So just put your phone number and like send it to. You're supposed to win. I know. For easier for
We
you.
have like chocolates over at the student center. I know, I sometimes. thought that. We got like 3
How about a
boxes.
Raider Central?
Yeah. We got like 3 boxes of lithium. Like, we have a lot.
Spell out my paper. Spell out my paper. So cover this up.
I remember what I
So now like super stressed.
I'm like peeking out my closet and my book.
Out of everything else, I just recently decided because I'm friends with their friend. And so.
Outside of this. How do you figure out what around?
Yeah, I get.
So, and this is.
People who know how broken it's so.
Or did everybody get a few people? Everyone have a chance? But so you can obviously add more people later, right? Like if you find that you're sitting next to somebody different or you didn't get a number for someone, add that later. But if you miss, now you have somebody you can reach out to in addition to me. And then also remember on the slides. I wrote one other number up here. I would just like to share this number. If there's an emergency on campus, obviously if it's an emergency, call 911. But if you see something like suspicious or if something is off or like you need it for any reason, campus security, there's their phone number. If something happens to me, somebody call that number or like help me. I shared with my class before. It's always my fear, like the night before the first week or the first day. I'm always afraid I'm gonna like trip and fall and hit my head and like, you know, like not die, right? But like, you know, be injured. If that happens to me, somebody call 911 or like campus security number. It happened my very first day here at this college. Not to me, but to a student in Founders in Fountain Hall over here. I had a student walking out of the room. She tripped and fell, hit the lid of the chalkboard and was unconscious on the floor. My very first day of teaching here at Norfolk College. She was fine, but it was trauma. It was traumatizing. I still remember it. Like I think about it. I think about it for me because I just felt so bad for her. She never came back. I think she was really embarrassed. I was like, it's okay. You can come back. No. So it's just like she left the college completely. So anyway, you have this today, but you have some numbers to call if you need them for your classmates. Are there any other questions about anything before we jump in and anything else at all? First slide. That was my excited dance, right? That's about as much as it gets, right? But chapter 1, we're going to look a little bit at kind of sexuality around the world. Okay, so we're going to look at like throughout time and around the world, just like a little brief overview of some different cultures and times that have shaped where we are today. Right, before we get there, there's kind of one little side thought about what is like human sexuality, and then we'll jump into that. And next class, I have a really cool part of a documentary that we'll watch about sexuality in the United States throughout the 1900s. But we have to get there first. So let's build up to it. And one of the first concepts that the book gets into is, you know, what is sexuality? This whole class is called human sexuality. So we're focusing on, you know, feelings and behaviors concerning sex and people. You can study animal sexuality. That's a little beyond what we'll look at. But we're going to look at all sorts of things related to sex and sexuality this semester. So looking at the different topics, right, we're going to look at researching sexuality. We're going to look at gender and anatomy, orientation, love, communication, relationships, pregnancy, birth control, STIs, like sexual expression, power, and then sexual images and selling sex. We're going to look at a lot of topics this semester. And every single one of you comes into this class with a different level of like comfort and knowledge related to sexuality. And I hope your comfort like grows a little bit as we go through, and also your intelligence with this, right? So there's kind of 4 components to our sexual intelligence. And as a side note, I love questions like this as short answer questions on exams. And those of you who've taken classes with me know that. But on an exam, this would be a great short answer question. What are the 4 components of sexual intelligence? And you could list them. You'll have a study guide, but just to kind of give you that little piece of information. So these 4 components, self-understanding is the first one, right? How well are you comfortable with your identity and your own sexuality and your own attitudes, right? Your kind of personal piece of the sexual intelligence components. And then how well are you able to interact with other people in terms of like your interpersonal sexual skills, right? Relationships and communication and conflict, things that we'll talk about later in the semester. Your scientific knowledge, maybe that's the lowest of the 4, right? And that one's going to grow the most as we talk about the terms for things and the anatomical like responses that we have and the names for our different anatomy that we don't typically tend to use. All right, so we'll talk about a lot of things related to that. And then culture. Culture plays a huge role in sexuality. The stereotypes that we have, what's normal or typical for sexuality. And all of these things are things we're going to talk about throughout the semester. And I really hope you leave here with a higher level of like sexual intelligence than you came in with. And then again, we all start in different spots. But just for fun, I created a little like sexual intelligence quiz. It's not worth points, it's just for fun. But we're going to do this together. I want you to get into groups of like 4 to 5 people, right? Whatever's around you, whatever's convenient. It can be the same as that you interacted with earlier or different, but like 4 or 5 people. I'll give you a minute to find some people. 4 or 5 people.
Yes.
Yeah, you can turn your desks with each other. You're going to spend maybe like 10, 15 minutes with these people. So turn your desks if you want, whatever works. One grab a whiteboard. No, wait, hold on, let me explain and then you can come back. So you're going to grab a whiteboard. I have a couple of different choices. You're going to grab an eraser, a pen, and if you want, you could grab a wipe. The eraser should work, but you can grab one if you want. So when you're ready, send one person up to grab a whiteboard, an eraser, a marker. Check your marker really quickly. If it doesn't work, you can throw it away and grab it. And again, check your marker real fast. If it doesn't work, we'll grab a different one. Okay. Everybody good? We ready? Okay, so you're gonna need one person in your group who's willing to write on your board. It doesn't matter who, this isn't worth points, it's just for fun. And I will tell you, I don't expect you to know these things yet. They're things that we're gonna cover all semester, so if you don't know it, don't stress about it. But what we'll do is I'll read you a question, and you're gonna write an answer on your board as a group, and then hold it up, and we'll see how we do. All right, and again, no stress if you don't know it, it's okay. Right, these are things that we're gonna cover all semester, kind of more for fun than anything else. But try and answer it quickly, maybe like 30 seconds or so, and then we'll hold it up, and we'll see how we do. Okay? Ready? Ready, okay. Number one, so on your board, Masters and Johnson were who? Who are Masters and Johnson? Make your best guess. If you don't know, feel free to be creative.
So.
Write it down and hold. All right, everybody got it down? Okay, hold it up. What do you got? Hold up. What did it say? They created economists, psychologists, sex researchers, health company, creators of sexuality, sex researchers. They're sex researchers, right? Or psychologists. So, right? Number two. All right. And again, if you don't know, we're going to talk about every single thing on it, so don't stress. Okay, number two. All right, this one is a true or false. 50-50 guess, right? A woman creates 1 egg per month on average. True or false?
Yeah, she asked that.
All right, let's hold that. What do you got? What do you got? False, 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 true. You're like, oh no, right? It's false. Women born only will ever have. All right, all right, ready? If your doctor asked you to point to your corona, what would you point to?
The what?
If your doctor asked you to point to your corona.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's not false. All right. Next one. What is the most common size mirror? It's you know what? So 5, 6, 6 inches, 5.5, 5.25, 5. So 5 to 7, 5.6 to be exact. If you want to specific. All right, 5. How many sperm do men produce each day on average? It's Yeah. 1,000, a million, 300 million. That's a lot of sperm. Number 6, true or false? Right, this is 50, true or false? Cornflakes, the cereal, were developed to lower sex drive and stifle masturbation.
Sauce.
You're like, that's way too random to be. All right, it's true. Graham crackers as well. Graham crackers and cornflakes were both developed to lower sex drive and stifle masturbation. Right. All right, number 7. The sexual response is present at what age? The capacity for sexual response is present at what age? All right, what do we got? 14, 15, 9 to 12, 13, 12, 3, puberty, 12, 4. Okay, before birth. So sometimes on ultrasound, you can actually see little boys having interactions in the womb. It starts birth. Right, so before birth.
Yeah.
All right, number 8. You ready for the false? Almost so me do the right thing, but we'll see. Okay. If a man draws before he ejaculates, a woman will not get pregnant. Right. All right, hold them up. What do we got? False, right? Sorry. He got married and then had a baby 3 months later. Like. pregnant, once an egg has been fertilized by a sperm. True or false?
I would think that's the same.
But then. Once it is in the house.
True, true, false, 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 true, false. Okay, it is false. And I heard a couple of people say it, so that's step one, but it has to implant into the uterine lining. So many steps.
Yeah.
Okay, another true or false? False. Be transmitted in contact with saliva.
Yes.
True or false? All right, hold on. True. False, 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 and yeah, yes. False. Saliva, unless it contains blood, and you have an open wound in your mouth, saliva is not one of the fluids that transmits HIV. Okay? All right. She has if you had an open cut in your mouth, then it could inhere you. Right, so if you were open mouth kissing somebody and they had a cut in their mouth and you had a cut in your mouth, you were both bleeding, which please, in that case, don't be doing it. That specific scenario can happen because saliva doesn't hold on. All right, three more, just three more. Next one, what is the average age at which people tend to lose their virginity? I thought that's at 6. Sixteen. So this is a little tricky because how are we defining virginity? But 16 is the average. All right, two more. Giving me a percentage. No math involved. What percentage sexually active people between the ages of 18 and 25 have an STD or STI?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I know that.
That's high. All right, ready? 50, 70, 30, 15, 77, 70, 25, 45. Do we have one back there? Oh, that one's yours. Okay. All right. Thank goodness it's not in the 70s. That's And again, these are just for fun, just to start thinking about these things. Last one. How long after intercourse can sperm stay alive inside a woman's body? Five, 4, 5 days, 30 days. They're just swimming around. 5 days, 5. We'll move on, but- All right. Thank you, thank you.
That's just good memory.
Can you imagine if it was 30 days? That'd be a long time. They're still there. 5 days is already a long time. All right. So just for fun. So we'll talk all of these things throughout the semester, right? It's just kind of a fun way to start thinking about some of the topics that we're going to get into. And again, don't feel bad if you didn't know. I don't expect you to know that. We'll get there. So what we'll do for the rest of our time today and then into next time is we'll start talking about some of the cultures and times. And I'm not going to give you a lot for each one, just kind of a little overview or like the main thing that would define that period of time. We'll go in different parts of the world, different times. And I've given you a map of where we're talking about just for reference. But we'll talk about how have we gotten to the attitudes and norms and ideas that we have today, which have been really heavily shaped by the norms and attitudes and cultures throughout time and around the world. Okay, so that's kind of what we'll go through. So we'll start with kind of going back as far as we have recorded history, looking at the ancient Mediterranean. So we'll look at ancient Egypt, Greek culture, and Roman culture. And again, kind of a map for perspective. So starting with ancient Egypt, some of the things kind of highlighting this period of time in this area of the world. And we're looking here at like 1000 BC. So a long time ago. Right, but these are some of the very early ideas around sexuality that we have documented. Ancient Egypt is credited with inventing male circumcision. So you can thank them or hate them, depending, right? But they have been the first one to document the use of this. And it was something that was practiced very differently than today. Today, when is a baby boy typically circumcised? Anyone know? Right after birth, right? Yeah, within the first 48 hours after birth, typically. In ancient Egypt, this was a rite of passage as a teenage boy. A teenage boy, and it was performed in public in front of everybody by a priest with a stone blade. Okay, so very different than today, but it was practiced mainly for hygiene, right? And it was thought to give you access to the ancient mysteries of the world, right? When you went through this rite of passage. So it was a rite of passage for young men to adulthood, very different from today. Very male-dominated culture, very heavy focus on what we call procreation. Anyone know what does procreation mean? What does it mean to procreate? Yeah.
Make a baby.
Make a baby. That's exactly it. Right. And as we go through a lot of these cultures, what you tend to see is there's a lot of focus on, sex is something between a man and a woman for the purposes of having a baby. Now that's changed a lot, obviously, over time, but very heavily focused on at this period of time. We have a lot of like hieroglyphic evidence of things like circumcision and sexuality. But the biggest thing here really being credited with inventing or popularizing circumcision. Ancient Greek culture, some maps and some images from that time. The Greek culture, interestingly, were the first ones to separate the idea of love and sex, that they could be different. Like we all know now that they can be different, But back then it was thought that they were one and the same. So what we see is we have Aphrodite and Eros. We have two different like gods or goddesses, each one being in charge of different things. So Eros was the god of love. And Aphrodite, sex. Okay, so slightly different things, right? That we can have different components here. That was like an idea that wasn't really around before this. We also see a lot of sexuality between young men and older men. Things that we tend to view as like homosexual now, but that's not how they were viewed by this culture. This culture, way back, again, early BC, practiced something that's up there at the top called pederasty. Pederasty was sexual contact between an adult man and like a teenage boy. It was very common at this period of time in this culture for young men to have an adult male mentor who taught them the ways of the world, right? Who taught them how to function and what they needed to do. And as a thank you for that mentorship, they would perform sexual acts on that man, right? So the teenage boy would often perform oral sex or like anal sex, right? As a thank you for teaching them the ways of the world. And that wasn't viewed as homosexual. It was something called pederasty. Again, it was almost like a rite of passage, but this is a very permissive period of time where we start to see some differences between love and sex. And then a lot of like what we would now view as homosexual behavior, but it wasn't viewed that way at the time. Roman culture, again, still BC, starting to get a little bit farther forward in time. Slightly different focus in Roman culture. And if you watch any like movies featuring like Romans, like 300 and like lots of the other ones that around that time, interesting, marriage and sex weren't viewed as much as a product of love, but they were more a way to improve your economic standing. People got married as a way to improve their economic and financial standing, not because they loved somebody. If you loved them, great, but that usually developed later. It was more of like a social standing and economic reason. We also see some really interesting ideas around like prostitution coming out of this period of time. There's a lot of prostitution in Roman like history. We have found these little like bronze and wood tokens that look like this, and they called them spintria. I'll write that up here. And there were these little like tokens or coins that were used to pay prostitutes, right? Or used as game pieces. They were kind of used interchangeably, but they were typically made out of like wood or brass or bronze. And it's something that we discovered later. And they were evidence of like prostitution taking place during this period of time. Yeah.
Like, for that name because Pompeii.
Uh-huh.
We're known Daphne, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pompeii.
Yeah, right. There's some connection to that, like, or at least it's one like theory, right? There's a lot of like the pornography, prostitution kind of coming out of this time and out of this culture. I love it. I love that. If we move more toward like ancient Asia, so looking at India and China, again, a map for reference here. In India, you see this idea of karma being something that was very, very prevalent and very important when it came to sexuality. Karma, how would you define karma? Like if you had to give it a definition, like what do you think of with karma? Yeah.
What goes around.
What goes around comes around. Like now I feel like I can hear like Alicia Keys singing that in the background. Like she has like a song with that. Yeah.
It's kind of like, I don't know, the universe's like bluff system with like,
Yeah.
you put out something good, you get something good back. You put out something bad, you get something bad back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of like a feedback system of like, whatever you do, this is the consequence associated.
I love that, right? And I wish it worked better sometimes, right? Like, but yeah, it's kind of that idea of like a feedback system, or what goes around comes around. And in this culture, sexuality and getting married and trying to have children was considered good karma, right? It was considered something that would give you good karma either in that life or the next life. And so we see a lot of like focus on like pursuing good karma through relationships and sexuality. We also got the invention of something called the Kama Sutra. which I'm sure many of you have heard of. And I have kind of a current example of it. There's been a million of these made and produced. I'll pass it around. We've got lots of it. But the Kama Sutra is probably the most famous sex manual. And it came out of this period of time. It talks about all the different ways that you can kiss somebody. And what are your duties as a good wife or a good husband? Different sexual positions. It's one of the first sex manuals to ever be created and like kind of put out there into the world. And it really promoted sex as a passionate activity. Instead of just being to have children, there could be passion as part of it as well. So kind of an interesting and very prevalent piece that came out of this period of time. In China, same kind of like looking at the similar region, 200 BC, still in that kind of early realm. We get a big focus on what we call the interdependence of things, kind of how things like work together and rely on each other. When you're interdependent, you're connected and relying on each other. And so we get this interdependence of all things unified in like an energy called the Tao, right? Which represents like the basic unity and like energy of the universe. And so we get this idea that when a man and a woman join together and have sex, it actually creates like a unity and a balance of energy. So just kind of a slightly different view, but still very heavy focus on like procreation. And sometimes we talk about like the yin and the yang, if you've ever seen this like yin and yang like image, right? Kind of the opposites of the world, that feminine energy and masculine energy, when you join them together, creates this like balance, right? It unifies those masculine and feminine properties, and that we each contain a little bit of each. Right? Like within the male energy, you have a little bit of femininity, and within the female energy, you have a little bit of masculine, and we can bring them together and balance them through sexuality. So just a lot of like really interesting ideas in these different cultures and different times, allowing us to kind of get to where we are today. Any like thoughts or questions about anything so far before I keep going? If we look at early Christianity, religion and sexuality have always been very connected to each other, and they still are. Right? There's a lot of like religious elements that are influenced by or sexuality elements that are influenced by religion and vice versa. Early Christianity began as a small sect of people following the teachings of Jesus. Now, we know very little about Jesus's specific ideas around sexuality, more just from what we've learned from like the Bible, but the original sin was sexuality and lust, right? In the Garden of Eden, we have this original sin of lust and sexuality. And so the big focus here is on overcoming desires of the flesh. That when you give in to desires of the flesh and sexuality, it's sinful. You're going to go to hell for it. You'll be punished for it, right? So really kind of associating sex with sin for the first time. And unless it's between a man and a woman for the purpose of having a baby, it's sinful. Certain positions, sinful, right? Because they aren't like sanctioned in a way. And we get these terms like celibacy and chastity, which mean very different things historically than they mean today. In the past, when you were celibate, you weren't married. So you and if you weren't married, of course you weren't engaging in sexuality. The idea of sex before marriage was unheard of, right? If we go back to this period of time. So being celibate meant you weren't married. Now, somebody who's celibate doesn't engage in sexual behavior. Maybe they're like 100% celibate or partially celibate. Chastity was being sexually pure, either through abstaining or maybe having like strict rules. But we get a lot of mentality of like sex is sinful, right? Sex and sin are one and the same, coming out of this very early like Christian dominated period of time. And that's something that very much continued into like the Middle Ages. The Middle Ages, like in Europe, are like 500 AD. So we're getting a little like more, a little closer to now. We still like see a very heavy influence of the church. And it starts to affect the way that we categorized women. Women in this period of time were kind of like dichotomized or split into two different things. And very rarely does anyone fit something when you split into just two options, right? But we had Eve and Mary. So we have like the virtuous Mary and like the sinful Eve, right? Eve who committed the sin in the Garden of Eden, and Mary who was like holy, right? And so we get this very contradictory image of women, that women are either like pure and chaste and like virtuous, or they're sinful and lustful and like giving into like desires of the flesh. And this actually really heavily influenced some of the witch hunts that happened during this period of time. Women who were overly sexual were thought to be conversing or like, working with the devil. And that's why they were lustful and sinful, right? You see a lot of that in this period of time. They were called witches and they were burned at the stake for being sexual and kind of fitting that one side. And I have to tell you, I don't know why I'm going to share this with you, but I'm going to anyway. Again, hopefully it's endearing. I was trying to find clips of these things. And apparently there's a video game where it's like Eve versus Mary. And I like captured a 10-second clip of it. I saw it, so I have to share it with you because it was just so outlandish. It's like one fighting with a snake and one fighting with a baby. It's like 10 seconds. It's 10 seconds, but I will never get it out of my head. And now you have to watch it too, right? So here, totally doesn't matter for anything other than it's sinful Eve versus virtuous, angry looking Mary. All right, here we go. It's literally, it's 20 seconds. All right, here we go. Eve versus Mary. Your life is complete now, right? Like I said, I had to watch it and it's burned into my mind. So you're welcome. Or I'm sorry, one or the other. Right? But it was Eve with her snake versus Mary with little baby Jesus, right? Anyway, I'm sorry if that was insensitive. I just thought it was funny. But I mean, that's where we get this idea, this like so contradictory image of women. It caused so many issues for women, right? And again, really heavily contributed to things like the witch hunts, right? Anyway, you're welcome and I'm sorry. Okay. I have a couple more. I think I have like 2 or 3 more slides and then I'll stop so I can take attendance. But if we move into kind of a slightly different part of the world, looking at the Islamic Middle East, in Islam, right, we have a culture kind of based on the beliefs of the Prophet Muhammad, right? And we get the Quran or the Quran, the holy book of Islam, and we see a lot of very like patriarchal, restricted ideas around sexuality and, very like power dynamic between men and women. When we say patriarchal, we mean like a very male-dominated culture, women not having a lot of rights and privileges, oftentimes having to conceal or hide themselves so as not to tempt men. We also see a term coming out of this time, eunuch. If you've ever heard that term, Johnny Depp says it multiple times in Pirates of the Caribbean. I always think of Varys from Game of Thrones or talking about being a eunuch. A eunuch was something that very much came out of this time. It was a man who was castrated, which means that his testicles have been removed. So not necessarily his penis, but his testicles. So he's not producing any sperm. It reduces testosterone to reduce sex drive. But it was typically done to these, and these people who were called eunuchs were the ones who guarded the prostitutes or concubines of the sultans. And so they wouldn't be tempted to have sex with them, or they wouldn't be able to have sex with them. So it's typically a man who's had his testicles removed. Less frequently, a man who's had his penis removed. This can be done chemically now, but it's typically something that was done then with like a blade. It was done as like a form of punishment, or to prevent you from being tempted to have sex with these prostitutes or concubines. The Renaissance, Reformation, and Enlightenment. I feel like I'm back in AP European history the second I put up this slide here. But the Renaissance means rebirth. And as we got into the Renaissance around like 1300 or so AD, this is a period of like joy and art and intellectual like thought. It was a very different time than the time that came before it. And this is something that you see a lot in history, right? You get this very permissive, like very open-minded, progressive period of time. And it's usually followed by a very like restricted, like backlash period of time. And we go back and forth and back and forth. And so in the Renaissance, we moved away from focusing on something called asceticism, focusing more now on joy, and like artistic thought. And a big part of joy was sex. And so in this period of time, it became okay to eat rich foods and engage in pleasurable things like sexuality. And then it was followed quickly by the Reformation, right? Where we kind of went back to Protestantism and sex only be between men and women for the purposes of procreation again. And then we go to the Enlightenment where we get to positive, right? We go back and forth and back and forth. And so we see these different periods of time here, especially in Europe, where we're kind of going back and forth between sex being pleasurable and natural and desirable to being something that's sinful and condemning you to hell. We're kind of going back and forth between the two. And I think I'm gonna stop there. So I have plenty of time to take attendance, and we'll pick up next time with the Victorian era. We'll talk about the biggest threat to female sexuality, the bicycle, right? I know, right? As I mentioned, I have a really cool documentary that we watched. So what we'll do is we'll talk a little bit about the Victorian era and like Puritan era and early sexuality. And then we'll watch this film about early 20th century sexuality in the United States. And the automobile and the bicycle were scandalous things that caused so many issues in relationships, divorces because of the bicycle, right? Who knew? So if you want to take a moment and pack up, I'll take attendance and then we'll call it a day.